there. Nkozi, Muteesa, One University, and Vincent, is there any other person? Any other university that I may not have captured? Kyambogo University. So we shall be hearing from them, and I look forward to their presentations as well as the discussions that may arise. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce to you core members within this gathering. First and foremost, I wish to introduce to you Dr. Loy Tuliabanawe from Kyambogo University, Department of Geography. You're very welcome. Mr. Eguru Moses from International Union for Conservation of Nature. They will take lead in discussing and informing us about the state of Uganda's ecosystem. We are very honored to have you here today. Dr. Barasa will be joining us shortly. Dr. Waswa is around. Dr. Anseka is online. So they have made quite a huge contribution in the field of environmental geography. So we look forward to their input as well. So at this moment, allow me to introduce some of the colleagues here at Muteesa. I have Dr. Ben with me, he's the quality assurance personnel. I have Dr. Rosie, he's the Dean, Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences. I have Madame Lunyolo Florence, he's the head of department for tourism and hotel management. I have Madame Shakira, she's the assistant in the Dean's office. And I have Amon is a student in the Department of Development Studies. So you're very welcome. Other members are online, and I think we shall be sharing a lot. So allow me to invite the first presenter. And that is James Ngazira. He's going to be looking at assessing adaptive capacity of agro-pastoral farmers to drought hazards within the cattle corridor of Uganda. Ngazira, you're welcome. Yes. It is blinking.
It is going to be able to change that. Use another.
You can start and get another.
The challenge is charging. When it's charging,
The problem is on charging. The battery. You just put it on
You
a
use
stick
this
and
one.
use another one.
yeah, it has a stick, but it's better than that. So, yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm James Lazira from Guru University, as well as a PhD student, Geographical Sciences, Makerere University. I'm going to be presenting on assessing adaptive capacity of agropastoral farmers to drought hazards within the cattle corridor of Uganda. And this falls in the thematic area of climate change and food security, based on the theme that is guiding us in the restoration, ecosystem, land degradation and ecosystem restoration. Taking this study within the cattle corridor or the rangeland area, you realize that in Uganda, it's one of the fragile ecosystems we have. Actually, it's the second fragile ecosystem in Uganda, the first being the mountainous regions. So looking at their degree of adaptability to climate change and outcome of drought hazards, you realize that drought hazards are recognized as a threat to the agropastoral communities' adaptive capacity in arid and semi-arid areas, as reflected by FAO report and also IPC report 2019. Drought hazards lead to increasing food insecurity to over 220 million farmers in Eastern Africa. And you realize that 60% of these are agropastoralists who are being subjected to water scarcity, crop failure, and livestock deaths. As you can see in the pictorial view, you realize that this is a threat to even which the study covered, looking at dry maize in the park, looking at the dry and also potatoes, Angola, and Zimbabwe. However, between adaptive capacity and drought hazards, most of them tend to outweigh the role played by these abilities of farmers to prepare and respond to these hazards. So among the agropastoralists, the resources and the skills which denote different levels of adaptive capacity, seeing and based on acting this crop livestock growing really have the capacity or not. Most of the scale of town locally considering as not a priority area. However, this study set out the level of farmers' adaptive capacity for hazards within that corridor. In order to achieve this, the study was guided by two objectives. One, to identify what influences households, the interregional variations in southwestern Uganda to northeastern Uganda as far as Kabong region is concerned. In this, during the study, districts were sampled. The study area constitutes three districts or three regions, which were based on the Office of the Prime Minister's Report 2019 about drought hazard isolation and risk vulnerability with regions with high severity of drought, including the northeastern part of Uganda. The central region was ranked to be low severity drought prone, whereas the southwestern was ranked to be moderate severity drought prone. And in these districts, there is high dominancy of agropastoral activities as reported by the Minister of Animals and Fisheries. And then we have also these areas which are selected, realize they experience stochastic rainfall patterns with high interannual and intra-annual variabilities, meaning that these areas, the rainfall which is experienced can allow agropastoralism to take place. However, it does not come as expected. You find that they may be having longer, prolonged dry spells, which are emanating from different causes, of which the assessments have been done. Despite being in the dry area, they are heterogeneous resources which these agropastoralists depend on. Data was collected using a cross-sectional design from a total of 426 households. Interviews were conducted, and it was on proportionate sampling that was done, because the sample size was not like all the areas which have been identified were sampled equally, but it was proportionate depending on the degree of severity within the region. Analysis was done based on regional and household level, and survey data was analyzed using Stata, innovation, roles, and others by principal component analysis, as well as the omnibus tables to indicate the variabilities using the post hoc test. This on adaptive capacity index and innovation index, data was normalized, and then later on the index was applied. In that process was followed. The results from the study are as below. First of all, I look at the agropastoral household determinants of adaptive capacity. What determines these people's level of taking on resources and skills to prepare and respond to the increasing drought hazards? These were based on severity. The variables identified here, we realize that some variables ought to be significant and others ought not to be significant when tested at 5% and 1% significance level. But you note that depending on the drought severity, the region of severity, there is variance in the way these variable indicators are. You realize, for example, taking the years of completed education, when you look at an average, a farmer in central region, you realize 6 years, has taken almost 7 years in school, whereas in the Southwest, 6 years, and in the Northeast, they were only like 3 years in school. And that implies a lot on the adaptability of this farmer towards the hazards that are being faced. Also, you take on the look at the main water source for the livestock. You realize that throughout this region, they are below the expected level, meaning that most of them are relying on unimproved resources. Therefore, the impact of degradation, land degradation, in owing to climate change still has an effect on them. Going ahead, looking at a farmer in the central region, where there is a farmer who's having a farm asset like a water tank, you realize it is not a common scenario in the central region as well as in northeastern region. Therefore, adapting to drought hazards as a farmer, as an agropastoralist, becomes a bit complex for such a person, because there will always be water scarcities, and in times of need, there is nothing to run to. Variations in this adaptive capacity index can also be visualized here. In this graph can tell us more that looking at those regions, the districts which were selected from the regions, for instance, Nakaseke and Nakasongola, these are representing the central, whereas Zimbabwe and Rakai represents the southwest. Napak and Nakapiripirit represents the northeast region, and you see that there is a lot of variability in the key determinants of adaptive capacity. For instance, the asset base, the innovation, the knowledge and information, the flexibility and forward-looking decision-making and governance. They have that variability that goes on. And that variability is dependent on the other determinants, which cut across these regions. This is a glance of some of the innovations that are coming up within the cattle corridor to see how they can counteract the outpacing hazards within the region. You can see the mulching, these improved breeds, this grass cutting and preparation for preparation as a way of, they always cut grass, sell it or use it as silage for their livestock. There's groups here forming up groups as one of the determinants that if one belongs to a group, the ability for that person to adopt to these hazards becomes a bit better. Besides that, I went ahead and looked at the inter-regional variations, looking at the innovation. Remember that the study points out the determinants of adaptive capacity as asset base, innovation, flexibility, and knowledge and information. But of these, I went ahead to deeply analyze the role of innovation in these various regions to see whether there is a variability in them, and I used the post hoc test to find out these variations. I noticed that looking at a farmer in a central region who has a new farm tool owned, farm tools like the sprays and others, is badly off as compared to this farmer in Southwest, implying that agropastoral farmers in central region are worse off in terms of innovation as opposed to the Southwest. Just like also when you're comparing the Southwest with the Central and Northeast, you realize farmers in the Northeast are also worse off as opposed to farmers in Southwest in terms of new farm tool ownership that can help them overcome the drought hazards. Also, when it comes to access to water, comparing these regions, you find that where negative values apply, such areas they tend to have more, or they are more felt with these negative impacts as opposed to those where the positive values apply when you compare the regions. This comes into beef up the above results. So measuring this adaptive capacity using innovation indicators depends on the demand and the effect of that innovation. What's the demand? You realize that when you take us back here, we say demand when you compare with these regions. There is a demand where negatives apply. It means such areas, the demand is there, but what has been done? Okay, that remains a question of how to help out. That's why the study is there, to inform policy, to help out in this, where innovation is still a challenge, such that they can be helped. The higher component indicator implies farmers opt for such innovation, and also there is negative differences implies there is worse off in terms of innovation. So the aggregated innovation index, if you look at it, is was superior to other indicators. Actually, when you take us back to this, looking at innovation, this column of innovation, knowledge and information, you'll find that the aggregated index in these areas is more superior to others, as opposed to those who base on assets, those who base on knowledge and information, flexibility and forward-looking and governance. They are always having elasticity. Though Nakapiripirieta and Napak, which lie in the Northeast, seem to be doing well in terms of flexibility. However, other components are lagging behind, especially innovation. I therefore conclude that adaptive capacity studies are multidimensional in nature. Therefore, and the purpose, they keep on changing, and the indicator variables which were studied depended on the context in time. One may go back to study something, the same thing, and finds different results. Okay? The variability in this household adaptive capacity always determines the magnitude of drought impact. Why? Because some of them, as we looked at the determinants, the level of education attained, the age, the asset possession, it keeps on varying depending on these determinants. And all households rely on innovation for survival in this region. That's my comment. 2021, where droughts were reported to be going up to around 7 months in these areas. And even the study also noticed that there's always that prolonged dry spell. Water scarcity goes up to 7 months. Relying on innovation may also be, a farm may be at risk at one point. Recommendations: long-term technique and social innovations across the cattle corridor, which are aimed at boosting adaptive capacity. The long term, okay? If it means sourcing out water innovations, they must be long term. Yield innovations must be long term. Household streamlined development policies, not focusing only at the national level, but household. Since the adaptive capacity indices vary at household level, okay? Therefore, technical innovations and also in organized farmer groups should be enhanced from policy to be streamlined to have that done. And therefore, further research be done on gender disaggregation of adaptive capacity within the cattle corridor, and also more detailed analysis on adaptive capacity and food security within the cattle corridor be done, such that the agricultural farmers can at some time have a smile to avert the increasing hazards owing to land degradation and climate change. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Bazira, for that wonderful presentation. I'm called Dr. Waswa Hamilton from Makerere University in the Geography Department. Mr. Bazira has been presenting on adaptive capacity of agropastoral farmers to drought hazards. And you have all heard that he has actually looked at, was interested in the skills and resources to adaptive, to these adaptive